Day 3 of my £5 for 5 days budget challenge, and I'm cooking breakfast, but I'm not having 5 sausages. So yeah, I thought what I'd do is cook a few sausages. I'm going to have 2 this morning for breakfast, and the other 3 I'm just going to cook, because then I have them as a cooked ingredient that I can quickly throw into something else in a different meal. Just putting the bacon press on top of those because it helps to keep them in contact with the pan. I've also got in mind a few things that will require raw sausage meat. I need to be able to take the sausages out of the skins and reform it into something else. So I'm going to thaw out some sausages in the fridge. That leaves me 5 sausages in the bag, still frozen. I haven't actually been keeping count. I don't know if there were 20 in there. I assume the count is accurate. It's late in the evening on day 2, but I have plans tomorrow to use some more rice. And I think I'm probably just going to cook it now and then cool it and put it in the fridge overnight. So I'm going to cook another cupful, another 200 grams of rice, which will cook up to about 600 grams of cooked rice. I'm just going to cook this, let it cool, and then put it in the fridge so that we can use it for frying or stuffing things or as an ingredient. And it does occur to me that actually a lot of time could be saved by doing that with a lot of ingredients. How many of the recipes that I've made, even so far, have started with caramelized onions? It might have been wiser to chop up all of those onions and caramelize them and then just freeze some of them or put them in the fridge and use them directly as cooked onions. Probably could have saved a lot of time that way. Likewise, the sausages, I could have just put them all in a tray in the oven and baked all 20 sausages. Perhaps in another series of videos, a budget will be placed on time, on preparation time. I'm certainly using less preparation time in this series of videos than I have done in the past, where I've fussed around with little bits of foraged ingredients and I've had to scrape things together and so on. But perhaps in the future we'll allow a slightly larger monetary budget and we'll restrict the preparation time and budget on that. Let me know what you think of that idea. We've got lots of flour left, so we're going to be making good use of that today. I think I'm going to make some flatbread type of things this morning. So 130 grams of flour, and then into that I'm just going to rub a little bit of lard. So let's see how much I think I need. So that's, yeah, it's only going to be about 20 grams of lard. Yep, and a pinch of salt. I'm going to rub this fat into the flour, so I'm just squishing it together like that. And it starts off, it will stick to my fingers, and then after a while it will just become crumbs. Just using my fingertips literally to just rub the fat into the flour like that. Do this in a food processor, or you could do this with a rubbing in tool. I thought I'd just do it with my fingers today to mix it up a bit. Pun intended. Really a wider bowl would have been more comfortable for this. I'm using self-raising flour, so I'm expecting a little rise from this. But I don't know what kind of flatbread I'm actually going to end up making here. It might be a bit like tortillas. It might be a little bit like pita. Who knows? Okay, I'm getting to the point now where I can't actually detect any remaining lumps of fat in there. Now I'm just going to add some cold water. Probably should have measured that. And make a soft dough. A bit more. Okay, that's good. It's all come together nicely. Might just need a little dusting of flour on the surface there to begin. It's quite a soft dough, so I might need to work some more flour into it to get it to what I want it to be. I'm just going to do this, so just kneading it with the heel of my hand. There is a reason, when I make things like this, there is a reason why I call it flatbreads and I don't call it tortilla, and it's because I never really know exactly what I'm planning to make. I'm just putting things together and I know roughly how it's going to turn out. If I was to claim this as a tortilla, it might disappoint some of you. If I tell you it's a flatbread, it's going to be flat and it's going to be bread. So it's a case of setting expectations, I think, really. Right, that's obviously not fully developed, but the gluten, you can see that's tearing quite easily, but some of that is because of the fat in there. Now I've got to roll that up onto really, really thin sheets and cook it in a pan. Just checking in on these sausages every now and again and turning them when necessary. Okay, that was about a golf ball sized piece of dough I rolled out there. I didn't have the camera rolling, but I'll show you again in a minute. And I've rolled it as thin as I reasonably can, just by rolling towards the outside all the way round. And that is now almost paper thin. So let's get the pan hot and we'll try and cook that. I'll roll out another one because I don't think that's quite big enough. So I'm going to go for a piece slightly larger than a golf ball. Make sure there's plenty of flour on the board. And just roll and turn. Anytime it looks like it's sticking, I'm just going to back off and add a bit more flour. It does take quite a bit of effort to get it to go as thin as I want. You can't get there all in one go. You kind of just have to roll and then relax. Keep on going. Got a little hole in there now. Right, so I've got a couple of these that I'm ready to test now, one slightly larger than the other. As soon as that pan's hot, we'll cook these. Pan is hot, so in we go. And that baking powder that's included in the flour is going to puff up and give that a little bit of a rise, so it's actually not going to be a really thin flatbread, at least I don't think so. That squeaking noise you might be able to hear is the sausages sizzling away. Just starting to colour on the bottom of that flatbread. Okay, yeah, and we're ending up with something that's a bit like a tortilla. It might not be a surprise to some of you, but to be honest, as I say, I'm just winging it. I'm not following any recipe here, I'm just making what I can with what I have. And just need to make sure that flour is cooked all the way through. It is a little bit spongy in there, and that's the self-raising flour. So it is a slightly thicker, slightly less flatbread. So that's just going to come out onto a plate. And to stop it turning into a cracker, I'm just going to put a silicone cover over the top of that. And that'll keep the moisture in there. And then the next one into the pan while I roll out the following one. And yeah, quite a lot of fat is coming out of these sausages. Look, there. I'm just going to reserve that because it is just lard. I mean, not that I have a shortage of lard this week, but that's fat that's usable. Certainly on one of my previous videos, that would have been like liquid gold there. So sausages are fully cooked now. Some people like them a bit more crispy than that. I find that with these cheap sausages, they just tend to turn into carbon if you go any more than that. I am going to split a couple of these and put them back in a pan. And while that's cooking, I'm just going to go get an onion. Now I am going to batch cook some onions later today because then I can have caramelised onions for use in a lot of different recipes. Didn't really know at the start what my recipe plan was going to be because I had to wait and see what my ingredients were going to be. So obviously if I'd been shopping with a bit more of a budget and bought the ingredients I wanted, I could have made a plan that has a bit more economy of preparation in it. So I could have made things where I batch cook a bunch of vegetables or batch cook a bunch of meat or whatever. And I'm starting to do that a little bit now because I'm getting familiar with the ingredients I purchased. We'll do a retrospective on day 5 and figure out what could have been done better. There's always something that could have been done better. Onions go in there with the sausages and we're just going to soften those down. I'm going to take these butterfly sausages out now because they are cooking a little bit on the inside, but also they're sticking to the pan and I'm just going to they're just going to fall apart. So I'll take those out now. So I've got the rest of that salad to use up that I prepared yesterday, and I've just added in the remaining part of one of those lettuces. So I've got one more little lettuce to use, but this is going to go into my flatbreads this morning. I'm also going to use up the remaining portion of rice there. There are still 2 big containers of rice that I cooked last night in the fridge. I'm going to put the rice in there and warm that through. As a breakfast, obviously this would make more sense if you were doing it for more people, because this is quite a workup just for me. So a bit of rice in there, a bit of sausage in there, a bit of salad. Yeah, not bad. This one might need to be a bit less in it. Yeah, these are definitely a bit thicker than a flour tortilla would be, and a bit more fluffy. Right, well that's a fairly substantial breakfast, I think. Let's get that to the table and have a taste. Well, I already know this is going to be crying out for some kind of sauce, and I don't have anything to put on there at the moment. If I'd been thinking ahead and I'd made a kind of onion sauce, for example, or if I'd used my chili flakes, I could have made some sort of sauce. Anyway, let's have a taste of these and see what they're like. I only got bread and salad and rice in that one. Didn't get any sausage yet. At least I don't think I did. Yeah, definitely these are a bit more fluffy and bready than a typical flour tortilla. They could do with some more flavour in them. They could do with some chili or tomato or something. However, they're all right. The bread is cooked really nicely. Yeah, it's kind of almost like halfway between a tortilla and naan. They're pretty good. Underspiced, but actually the moisture of the carrot and apple and lettuce does help to make them into something that's interesting to eat. Yeah, I don't know if you can see in there, the bread's got a little bit of structure, which is really nice. I've got a little bit of leftover rice and salad there, which I'm not going to waste. I wonder who that bit could be for. Hello. What have I got for you here? Oh, 2 paws. That's lovely. Is that all right? That's all there is. Okay, that was not a bad breakfast. It could have done with some more flavour. It was quite filling and quite interesting in its own right. We've got some leftover lard, which I'll save. That came out of the sausages, so that might actually have a bit of sort of peppery flavour in it. And I've got 1 flatbread. And I think I might just leave this out and let that go crisp, and then fry it later, make some crackers of some sort. Today on Here's What You Could Have Foraged, oysters. So if we go down here onto this shore, we've got, well, there's some juvenile oysters there, getting bigger and bigger. In a minute we'll find some that are big enough. There we go. So oysters, these are all oysters here, quite a significant oyster bed. And actually we're not a long way away from where I looked at oysters in one of my previous videos, and people said you should have picked it, you should have got those oysters and cooked them. So here's the thing, that's an oil refinery, that's a container port and a cruise terminal over there, and then quite a busy industrial area over there. What's up, Eva? Yeah, I know. See, there we go. So there's a nice decent size. I'm not throwing it, it's not a rock. There's a nice decent sized oyster there, but I don't think they'd be safe to eat here. I don't think they'd be safe to eat here. Will you be quiet? Eva, go. Because of industrial pollution, which I don't think you can purge out of the oysters by just putting them in water, because it would be things like heavy metals. So there's what you could have foraged, but I don't recommend it. And of course those aren't the only shellfish here. So if we look around, all these little black blobs here, these are winkles, and they are also technically edible, but I wouldn't eat them from here. Here's what Eva really wants. Oh, Eva, you're half-wit, honestly. Here, look, watch where it goes. So yeah, there's some quite big oysters. That one's dead, that's an empty shell, and there are loads of them here, but I wouldn't eat them from here. I mean, also over there's a boatyard. There's all sorts of boatyards here which would have been applying anti-fouling to leisure and commercial craft, and although modern standards for all of that are probably quite good, this has been a shipping port for hundreds and hundreds of years, and so there's probably a build-up of industrial contaminants here that are going to be here for centuries. Some things I potentially would eat from this beach. So sea beet here is growing in the gravel. Now why would I eat that here if I won't eat things out of the sea? Well, rain falls on this bit and percolates down through the beach into the water, and so what's happening here is any contaminants are getting washed out of this bit of beach here. Sea beet has not particularly deep roots, and it has a very short life cycle as well, so it's not so likely to have built up contaminants in it. I probably still would choose to pick it from somewhere other than this beach, but if I found a really nice specimen here and it's high up on the gravel like this, I might choose to get it here. Not the right time of year really for picking sea beet, it's a little bit early in the season, so what there is here is a bit sad. But sea beet is a lovely, lovely vegetable when you get a good specimen. It's like spinach would like to be if it had some flavour. It's like a succulent, slightly salty, better flavoured version of spinach. Also, if we look around here, there are shells of cockles and clams, whelks as well. So there's an empty whelk shell. That's I don't think that's a cockle, that's a clam of some sort, but there will be cockle shells here as well. So if I was to dig out in the gravel out there, I would find bivalve mollusks, which again, technically good eating, but they're filter feeders, so I wouldn't eat them from these waters. And over there's something you can't forage, because swans belong to the queen. And here's what you mustn't forage. Well, there's nettles there, but there's also hemlock water dropwort in its very early stages of growth. Looks lovely and fresh like parsley, but that's deadly poisonous. Just a small amount of that would kill an adult human. So that's what you mustn't forage. And too slow with the camera, but we just saw a rabbit run out of the undergrowth there and into the undergrowth over there. So there's what you kind of could have foraged if you were fast enough. You didn't even see it, did you? Eva would be fast enough. And here's a much better example of stinging nettles showing some fresh spring growth in a car park. So again, possibly not the ideal place to pick them, but just illustrates that if you look for the right microclimate, you can find wild vegetables growing that might be slightly out of season. Okay, lunch today is a bit al desco because some bright spark had the brilliant idea of making 5 videos in 1 week. So I'm keeping it simple. I've just got my remaining 2 sausage rolls. I've got an apple and 2 apricots. That's my lunch for day 3, and it's going to be fine. Actually, that's part of the reason why I prepared these things in advance, is to try to save myself a little bit of effort on some days. So, sausage roll, well, we know what that's like, but I haven't tried one of these cold yet. Interestingly, better cold than they were warmed. Well, I don't think you need to sit and watch me eat an apple and 2 apricots, and I've got work to do. So that's lunch on day 3. That gives me a bit of time to do some editing, and then we'll cook something a little bit more elaborate for dinner tonight. In preparation for dinner this evening, I'm going to make onion soup. Now I hesitate to call it French onion soup because I have one key ingredient missing for French onion soup, which is good beef stock. So it's not going to be French onion soup, but what I do have is Marmite, which is kind of like beef stock. So this is going to be atomic shrimp onion soup. So lots of onions to cut and peel, and all of the pieces, all the trimmings and skins are going to go in my stock box, and we will get round to using this probably on day 4, because apart from my Marmite and chili flakes, I've got no more kind of flavouring or stock ingredients left. So I'm going to have to make some tasty stock for one of the things I've got in mind for day 4. Interestingly, peeling onions never makes me cry. Just never really thought of it as that sad. I'm actually going to make more soup than I need for this evening, because some of this leftover French onion soup is going to get used as an ingredient in future dishes. At the start of this exercise, I was thinking about what I have. I'm now thinking about what I need to reserve for the recipes that I might want to do from here on in. So I've got 3 onions left downstairs, quite a big bag of onions, plus obviously the one that was in the stew pack. I think if you were able to somehow quantify the amount of flavour you get for your money, onions would be high on the scale. And then these onions, I think I'm going to cut them into not rings, but quarter slices. And then I'll talk about what we're going to do next. There's quite a lot of onions there. So the fat we reserved from the sausages this morning is going to go in the pan. And to that, I'm going to add another 10 grams of lard. While that's just melting, let me show you what's happened to this morning's flatbread. This is the leftover flatbread from this morning. It's now actually completely crispy. Now, you might call that stale, but I'm actually going to toast that and make it into crackers to go with my soup. Okay, now that might seem like a lot of fat to be frying in, but here come the onions. I'm just going to gently fry them until they reduce down, and I've got to get a lot of caramelisation in there. So I've got to start off slow, and I can turn the heat up once they start to soften and caramelise. But we're going to go really gentle with this. We've got to sort of soften them first, and then, oh, there's one I forgot to slice there. We better go and slice that one up. It kind of got buried under the pile of onions. Right. Now, I would normally put a little bit of salt in there to help draw out the moisture and create some liquid for it to caramelise and to cook those onions thoroughly without burning them. But the stock I'm going to be making is going to be based on Marmite, which is very salty, so I won't add any extra salt to the onions. My ration is 1 tablespoon of Marmite, and that actually happens to be what's left in this jar. I'm going to have to ask you to trust my judgment on this, but what's left in that jar is about almost exactly 1 tablespoonful. I'm not going to try to get it out into the tablespoon measure, because that's just going to make an awful mess and waste a lot of Marmite, and it'll get stuck all over my hands and everything. Because to get it out of the jar, I'm going to put some hot water in there and just dissolve that, which will make it easier to handle. Onions are going soft now, which is lovely. So I can crank up this heat just a little bit, but I'm going to keep a really close eye on this because I don't want to just burn them. So while those onions are cooking, let's talk about this sourdough attempt. It is doing something. There are a few little bubbles in there, I don't know if you can see them. And I can smell the apple actually, but I can smell something kind of fruity and kind of fermenting. I'm going to take that piece of apple peel out of there now because whatever it would have done, it's done by now. I'll just wash that off because when I add some more water and flour to here, I'll use water that's rinsed off anything that's on that apple peel. And I'm still not very sure this sourdough is going to come to anything, so I'm loath to invest too much flour in it, although we do have plenty of flour. But I'm just going to put another 2 tablespoons full of flour in there. I'm just not sure that self-raising flour is going to make sourdough. Then some of this water, and then I'm just going to mix that up until we've got a kind of sloppy dough. We'll see if that does anything. This is probably going to be its last chance. If I don't really see anything that resembles a yeast activity tomorrow, so we've got some fizzing there, but that's certainly just the baking powder. Tomorrow is the crunch day for this really. If it hasn't actually started to make something that I believe is sourdough, then we're going to abandon that and we'll just carry on using the flour for its intended purposes. Let's just check on these onions. Starting to see some browning at the bottom there. And I'm feeling a bit peckish, so I'm just going to have one of these sausages that I cooked this morning. Just going to eat that cold. It's a cooked sausage. I do actually think these sausages are nicer like this than they are when they're hot. And as you can probably see, we're really getting some nice gentle browning happening on these onions now. And look how much they've cooked down. I reckon that's probably about half the volume it originally was. Some of that's just because it's soft and it packs down easily. Some of it's because we've driven off water. It's 4:30 and the sun is nearly down, so we're going to switch to artificial lighting now, so apologies for the weirdness of lighting. Still going, and they're still getting steadily more tawny coloured now. And I just need to make sure, I don't know if you can see there, there's a little bit of caramel kind of stuck on the bottom of the pan, so I'm just going to smear some onions across that. Make sure I pick up that off the bottom of the pan so it doesn't stick and burn really badly. So just kind of smooshing the onions onto the bottom of the pan to pick up that fond. I'm going to switch over to the wooden spatula now just because it's easier to keep things on the move without it getting all clogged up with the bits of onion. We're probably now at the minimal point of caramelisation for making soup, but I'm going to carry on because the deeper the caramel colour, the deeper the flavour. Right, that's as far as I'm taking that. So now, don't forget there's all that lard is in there, so I've got 30 grams of flour. I'm just going to turn the heat down now a little bit and just let that flour soak up the fat and cook. Might need to add a little bit more fat by the look of it. Another 10 grams of lard. Because what we're looking to do here is create a roux, or something like a roux. I think it's still a roux if it's made with other fats than butter. I'm going to cook that so that the flour is nicely cooked so we haven't got any raw flour flavour in there. And then water. I've got some cold water here. I've got 500 ml of water. I don't know how much it's going to take, but we'll figure out when we get finished. Now, I need some of that Marmite stock. I'm going to put in about probably a couple of tablespoons full of my Marmite stock. Stir that through. And then I'm going to give this a taste for general level of seasoning and flavour and figure out whether I need to add more salt or just more water. So let's have a little taste of that now. So a little bit more, probably another tablespoonful of the Marmite stock. I'm going to save the rest of that and we might use it on something else. And then I can crank up the heat a bit. I think a little bit more water in there, because we can always reduce it back down. Another little taste. Yeah, I'm not going to put any more salt in there. I think we probably will put the whole 500ml in, and then we'll just reduce it back to the required consistency. Right, well I'm completely happy with that now. So that's taken that whole 500ml of water and then I reduced it back a bit, and that's just about the right consistency for an onion soup for me. I'm going to decant this now into a saucepan so I can use this big pan for something else. To go with my soup, I'm going to make something a bit like a rosti, but it's going to be made from swede and carrots because I've got a lot of swede to use and I haven't really actually done justice to it yet. So I'm just going to peel this and grate it. I'm grating it like this so that I get nice long fibres. If I did it like that, I'd get shorter ones, because hopefully that will help it all cling together. Okay. Just in case there's any juice that needs to come out of that, squeeze that into the stock box, because I'm going to be frying this stuff and I don't want too much moisture in it. The flour is going to absorb some, but I need some of the moisture to come out. Carrots, second verse, same as the first. Again, grating at an angle like that to create long shreds and maximum awkwardness. If you can hear the oven in the background, by the way, that's because Jenny wants a baked potato this evening. Jenny's not participating in this experiment because I just felt it would be unfair. The truth is, Jenny doesn't like onions nearly as much as I do. Okay, same thing with the carrot. There will be a lot of juice in there, which we don't want in the mixture, but I will capture in the stock box, because why not? To make my pseudo rosties, I've got a pinch of salt and we're going to put flour in there. So I'll start with one big spoonful like that, which is 30 grams. So I'm going to go for about 50 grams of flour, and then just going to mix that in and see what happens. I think it might need a bit more than that because I think I've made quite a lot here. The idea is I want that flour to absorb any moisture out of the vegetables, even though I did squeeze a lot of the moisture out, and then kind of act as a glue to stick it together. It doesn't appear to be having exactly that effect at the moment, so what I might do is just get my hands in there, yeah, that's better, and give it a squish around. So we're just going to go for another 25 grams of flour. Again, just get the hands in there, squish it all down together. Yeah, that's holding together a lot better than it was. Okay, right, so I'm going to get these. I might even oven bake these, you know. I think they might be. Yeah, I think these might go in the oven rather than frying them in the pan. Let's see if we can do this before the scale resets. So I'm weighing the pan. I've got my block of lard here. The paper is getting a bit ragged on it. So I'm just going to grease this pan like that. That might be all it needs actually. And then weigh it again, and in theory 2 grams of lard. And then those little things are going to go in there something like that. I'm just kind of smushing them until there's no bit sticking out of them, or not much. Okay, right, those are going to go in the oven at 180 for, I don't know, half an hour. This flatbread, which has gone completely hard, I did have a little sneaky taste off the corner there because it was broken, and it's a tiny little bit, not stale, but soft. So I'm just going to put that in the pan over a gentle heat and kind of toast it to just drive off any residual moisture, make it really crispy, and turn it into crackers. I think actually it might be less prone to burning if I snap it into pieces. and then it's going to have closer contact with the pan. Yep. So I'm just going to give it another little toast on this side, and then we're done, I think. We'll take it out and put that on the rack, and that will allow any residual moisture and steam to escape, and hopefully we'll end up with nice crispy crackers. Okay, I reckon those are done. Now, they might have been nicer with a bit of onion in them, but there's plenty of onion in what I'm preparing today. So yeah, I think those are done. They feel nice and soft, and they've been in there for half an hour. I did take them out and give them a flip halfway through. I think they'll be interesting. I don't know what really to expect from this, but pretty sure they're going to be cooked all the way through. That's the most important thing, is that the flour is cooked. So while those rusty things are cooling down a little bit, I'm just going to bring this soup back up to temperature. So, not French onion soup. I think I'll call it marginally French onion soup. And because we're not attempting to be authentic here, my onion soup can be garnished with some little slices of sausage. Because it's what I've got, and I've got to try to make sure that I hit my protein targets for the day. Well, there's dinner. Let's get that to the table, give it a taste. Right then. Well, first I'm just going to taste this soup with a piece of sausage. It's just so intensely oniony. And I could have taken it further than that by just caramelising those onions even more than that, but I think that's about the right level for what I like. So it was a little bit under-seasoned, but I really didn't want to go too far with it. I think I'm probably most curious about these weird vegetable rusty things. Let's see if that's worked at all. So, well, they just smell of vegetables. Really, really sweet. That's interesting. There's not a trace of the turnip sort of flavour of the swede there. There's just an almost cake-like sweetness to it. That's really interesting. That gives me some thoughts about the other swede that I've got. Maybe we can make a cake of some sort. And I do like crackers in soup. Just wonderfully crisp and light. Remind me a little bit of Cornish wafers. I kind of wish I'd made this on day one and made a bigger batch of it, and then just used this wherever I needed a sauce. Or rather, used this wherever I felt sauce was lacking. In my breakfast burritos this morning, this is the kind of missing ingredient from my breakfast burrito this morning, is something to bring it all together and stick it together and something to form a sauce. So I am going to save about 1/3 of this soup, and that will be used as an ingredient in further recipes. So that's the end of day 3, and the totals are on the screen right now. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you for day 4 tomorrow.